Hey everybody, it's noon Pacific on a Monday, so you know what that means. It's content chat time. And today I'm super psyched to have one of our OG content chat friends, Shane Shaps, here to talk to me all about social media and video and branding and all these good things because, oh my, has it been a year? Shane, thank you so much
Indeed.
for being our guest.
Thanks for having me. I love seeing you again, Erika. It's fun to be face to face.
Exactly. For those who don't know you, can you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I own a company that is currently called 520 East Brands, but it will soon have a new name. And our company is an outsourced voice to the brands we represent. So we work with all kinds of companies, small, large, national, local, and we basically are an extension of their marketing team. We work with them on implementing, designing and then implementing a persona, a personality, a person behind the keyboard on all of their social media platforms.
Excellent. And as a disclosure, we have had some shared clients in the past, and it's been fun to kind of see how that all comes together. Because of course we focus more around longer form content and content strategy, and so we do frequently work with those who do more around the community and social media and interactive kind of communication. So it's been super fun.
Yeah.
Now, over the past year in particular, there's been so much shift happening as far as how brands are using social media and what's really working for personal branding. You know, everything from we're seeing more of those kinds of dark social channels, which are things like, private forums, private
Mm-hmm.
messaging platforms, and all of that have taken over. And the way that people are engaging with brands on social has really changed. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, what the social media landscape looks like right now and the channels that are most effective right now for brands and personal thought leadership.
Sure. So, when we started this business 15, almost 16 years ago, the purpose of social was really, it was sort of like customer service nonstop all the time. People had a complaint or a problem or a question. They'd come on social, they'd ask their question, or they'd, let it fly with their negative complaints, and then we'd respond. Today, it's much more, rather than being so reactive, it's much more proactive. Companies are putting out their story, they're telling who they are, they're talking about their brand, what kind of solution do they offer. And not every piece of content is a sales piece of content. Now, typically there is a call to action. Typically they want their community to take some kind of action, but that action could be share this with your friends. It may not be buy my product. So it's much more into storytelling, which we really appreciate. I've always said social media practitioners, and that's what we are, we're practitioners, that we focus on the social side. The media, yeah, we should know how to use that, that's where we perform, but the social and the conversation is really what's most important. We're seeing a big uptick, and I'd say this is nothing new, but it continues in videos, in reels. Instagram specifically is prioritizing video content. I always give an example when I'm talking to a potential client. Have you ever watched a teenager on a phone? They're like this, right? But adults do that too. And so what we want to do is stop the scroll. And the best way to stop that scroll is with a person, not a product. And if that person is moving with video, even better. So video is still king, but I'll also say, and I've heard this on several podcasts and I'm definitely experiencing it, long form content is back. For a long time, I think people were sort of like that goldfish mentality, like if it's longer than a tweet, I'm not processing it. And for someone like me who has some processing issues, that was great. However, I do think that people are digging in a little bit further now, and they do want to be more educated on the topics that they're reading about in many cases. And so blog content is really important for that. If your website doesn't currently have an active blog, that's something to take a look at for several reasons. Most notably, it helps you become the expert in your field. It gives you content that you own. But from the social standpoint, it gives us different places on the website to link to, and that helps your SEO. So by having fresh content on that website, you are able to further explain your thoughts, but also able to link to different places from social.
I'm also seeing that, for a while there were a lot of people doing audio only podcasts and, other
Mhm.
kinds of audio content, but it feels like
Mhm.
there are more folks doing video content like this, where we're having
Yeah.
a conversation, but instead of it just being an audio file that you're going to download and listen to on your commute or at the gym, it feels like there's more of this kind of live streaming video happening.
I think so too. And I think it's both. I definitely have audio podcasts that I listen to. They're part of my morning routine. I'm putting on my makeup. I'm listening to news. I listen to Smart List every week. It's one of my favorites. But what I always find so fun is even when it's just a quick video clip or a still image from that conversation, you can actually put a face with the name, see what they, even if you already knew what that person looked like, you can see what they look like that day. So
Yeah.
it provides another level of authenticity to it, and I really enjoy that.
Totally agreed. Now, I'm going to ask you a kind of controversial question. Do you have clients that are on the platform formerly known as Twitter? And if so, like, who are those? What kinds of brands are still finding success and, having fruitful conversations there?
I'll be honest with you, when all of this started happening and Twitter became this mess of I don't know, and I felt like it was camp ended and I couldn't find my friends. I didn't know where my friends were, and I was pretty lost. A lot of the clients that we were currently working with at the time were small local businesses, and we actually found we were not getting engagement, we were not getting reach on Twitter, and so we pulled back on Twitter and reallocated that time into more video content on Instagram. We even picked up our activity on LinkedIn. One of the things that we do on LinkedIn is, we always have a company page, but we also tell our clients LinkedIn's a person to person program. So having a company page for your small local business, that's great, but the likelihood anyone's going to engage with you is pretty low. So we work with them, whether it's training our clients sales team to be active themselves, or in many cases we actually take over for the public facing people of the company. So the answer is no, we don't have anyone on Twitter right now. But that being said, a lot of our clients are small businesses. I mean, I think that there's still a place for enterprise companies to share their information on Twitter. I guess my question continues to be, how do I know I'm talking to the real company? So, there's still
Yeah.
authentication questions there. And so I don't trust it. I'm really not active on Twitter, which is so weird because it was like my whole life. Morning till night, I was tweeting. That's where I had all my friends. And so it's kind of been a little bit of a loss that personally I've grieved.
Yeah, I did too. I definitely felt it. But especially now when you can't get the analytics support, when you can't
Yeah.
trust that a check mark means that there's actually a verified entity, it's made it
Yeah.
really hard to justify to clients spending more than a minimal amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's really only been for those clients that had a really significant following. And they're
Hmm.
primarily on our end, using it just for content distribution. And
Right.
they're really not getting that engagement. They're not getting people
No,
commenting or resharing because they don't have the reach.
absolutely. I agree. Yeah. As soon as the analytics tanked, we were like, we can't even tell you if this is performing. So what is the point?
Exactly. So with all of that in mind, what are the foundational elements that you recommend now for brands that are looking to put together a successful social media strategy?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. You got to start with strategy. So the first thing that we do before we do anything is figure out your objective, your content buckets, your persona. What is your not just your brand standards from a look standpoint, but also how it sounds. What are the words you can use and what are the words you can't use? All of that has to be determined along with the cadence that you intend to use for publishing before you can even dig in, because you have to take those your current audience demographics and your target audience demographics to figure out even what social media platforms you should engage on and where to put more of your time. So that's number one. And then I think prioritizing, again, long form content in video, those are going to be critical. Now, that's not to say having carousels of photos of your products and services isn't relevant. It absolutely is. Graphics also, but they're not going to get the kind of reach you're going to get from a video. I can't hear you. Sorry.
I think over the years, many folks have kind of equated video content with being time consuming and expensive,
Mhm.
and, oh, you need to have professional production. But what's been interesting to me is how all that's changed. So I'd love to hear,
Mhm.
from your perspective, um, first let's just start with, making that case to people on why it is important that they have the video content, especially if they want to be a thought leader, because there's so many people who are like, oh, I hate to see myself on video. I don't want to listen to myself, on a video later. Like there's,
Mhm.
for a lot of people, there's this reluctance. So what do you say to them? What's the pitch that you give them for why they need to do it, and, to just rip off the Band-Aid and,
Yeah.
and start.
Well, several things. I think, again, back to stopping the scroll, that movement of a person just in general is going to help you stop the scroll. But I also think, how can you really relay your thoughts if you're not speaking it, if they can't hear the intonation in your voice? It's important. Now, do you need a whole production studio? No. I mean, if I'm scrolling through Instagram, I am less likely to stop on a video that looks overproduced with drone footage and B-roll and all this than I am to stop on a 1 minute, talking head giving me their opinion on something. I think that is really the best way to go. And this week, so I do these Monday marketing minutes, and this week we're focused on being real, and that's really what's important, because your viewers, the people who are seeing you on social, they want to feel like they get you, that they can relate to you. So, if your makeup isn't perfect and the lighting's not ideal, it's okay, because you look just like them. It makes you approachable, and so I think that that's really important. Do we always want to show ourselves in the best light? Yeah, you bet. But can I cover up this wrinkle in the middle of my forehead? No, I can't. There's nothing to do about it. It's there. So, to be real and be authentic, and, sometimes you stumble over your words, sometimes you spill your coffee in the middle of it. That's okay. I think that there can be a nice balance. We always tell our clients, your overproduced, curated, beautiful, expensive video belongs on your website, because you want to get your money out of that. You want people to view it over and over and over, and you own that website. Whereas Instagram, you don't really own anything. Facebook also, all of these social platforms, it's all rented space. So you don't want to spend too much time or money putting into those videos. Make them quick, make them authentic, get your point across. And there's lots of tools you can use. We use CapCut as one of the softwares, the apps that we use when we're building videos. And CapCut actually has a really cool teleprompter tool. So if you're not sure you're going to remember all your points, you can type them in there and you can actually sit and read it from your phone into video. Another thing that I have found, reels have to be 90 seconds. Go live. You can talk as long as you want if you want to go live. And you might mess up. You probably want an index card to make sure you have some bullet points and you don't get lost in your thoughts. But going live eliminates the 90-second, and it will allow you to go longer. And so that's something to think about. You can also do a video and upload it as a post on Instagram, but your reach is going to be better if it's a reel or live. So
Totally. To that end, what is the kind of optimal setup from an equipment and software standpoint for folks who do want to take a DIY approach versus hiring somebody to be, filming them for video? Because I
sure.
agree, it's so
Yeah.
much better to just do it yourself.
Just do it. And I will say, the way that our team shoots, it is kind of DIY. I mean, we don't have multiple cameras and, all of this professional equipment. We've got equipment we bought off Amazon. You can buy it too. I've got the Alex Earl light that they advertise on TikTok all the time. I have that. It's a great little light. It clips onto your phone. I have another light that's like $5 I got on Amazon. We do have a lavalier mic that we use. So if we're shooting a client, we don't have to have that cord swinging back and forth, which is what we had like 5 years ago, but now we have a lavalier, it's wireless. So we can do that. And it doesn't make the client louder. It just makes their voice clearer in the video. So we do recommend some sort of microphone situation. You want to make sure that you're not backlit, you don't have the sun right behind you, or you're not staring into the sun, but those are easy things to do. And so finding a good place in your house that works. The best light that I get it is in the bathroom, my main bathroom in my house. So the video I put up on Instagram this morning, that's where I shot it. It just happens to get really good light and the sun's not on my eyes. And so, it has good acoustics. So it works. But that's really, daylight, go outside. If you're making a 30-second video and it's freezing, it's 30 seconds, go outside, make a video. It's really easy. So that's what I recommend. I don't think you need to invest in a whole closet full of professional equipment when you're doing this for the purpose of social. It's going to go by very quickly. People are going to see it and respond and move on. So again, I wouldn't over invest in what you need for those kinds of videos. Make them real.
So in the spirit of that authenticity and having real video, what are some natural ways then that people can just get started with creating that video content in the course of their daily activities?
So I would start, again, back to strategy. I would start with a calendar. Come up with 10 or 20 topics. Each could be about 1 minute, and just write them down. I have mine. We use Basecamp as our project manager in our company. So my Basecamp calendar has every Monday, I've got the theme of the week. So I have a video, I've got a graphic, I've got a blog post, I've got a new e-newsletter all around that theme. So each week that's been planned out. That would be the first thing I would recommend, is make that plan. And then really, if you're in the moment, you can plan them out and go ahead and video them and have them in your library and just keep them. But you can also, one day your makeup may just look really good. So great time to shoot. One day you're sitting in the car and you haven't pulled into the garage yet. The lighting's really good. Shoot it then. So it can be in the moment as long as you're still going with a plan and a strategy.
I love that. And I think, as you do more of them, you're gonna start to know when those right times are to shoot in those great
Yeah.
locations, like in your bathroom.
Yeah.
For me, my office, this is natural lighting in my office because I have a huge window in front of me. And those are, things people are always like, oh, that's so lucky. And I'm like, that is not luck. I put the desk here on purpose.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
about thinking through where
Not
are you
luck.
going to be when you're shooting all the time and then making that be a
Right.
great space.
Right.
But that said, what worked for you yesterday isn't going to necessarily work for you tomorrow. These things,
Right.
what is getting engagement or what's working for your business objectives one day could change the next. So I'd love your thoughts on how you evolve your social strategy over time and how you make sure that you are hitting the mark with what you're creating.
So one of the things we do, and this is, anybody can do this, is we follow all the accounts. We follow Masseri, for example. He's the one that tells us what's coming on Instagram. So straight from the horse's mouth, he tells us this is what we're prioritizing. So making sure that you are staying current with the trends and what these platforms are prioritizing and optimizing, that's really important. Months ago, it was all about hashtags, and then we went to alt tags, and now we're really focused on keywords. So the keywords have to match up between social and blog content and websites. So we work hand in hand with the person handling SEO for any client. They're giving us those keywords and we're partnering with them to see what keywords we need to bump up. And so that's really important, that you're staying ahead of the trends and staying educated. If you're still doing this the way you did it 5 years ago, you're definitely doing it wrong. I will say that. and most of the time I say you can't do this wrong, but you can. So you need to know what's important. I think also, you look at a platform like LinkedIn. LinkedIn has definitely shifted since everything happened with Twitter. People are sharing a little bit more of a window into their personal life there. It's not, look at my kids every single day, but it does get threaded through, and it is okay to be a little bit softer on there and not so, corporate. It can be fun, and you can relate to people as a person and not always just like this professional person, because that doesn't really authentically represent me. I am who I am, whether I'm on LinkedIn or Instagram. And so having that personality come through is really, really important.
I agree. Although I think we've all had some situations on a LinkedIn, for example, where people showed a little bit too much personality. I've
Yeah.
certainly gotten some unsolicited emails that were more like appropriate for a dating
Hmm.
platform.
Right. True.
And
That's funny.
similarly, I think sometimes when people are doing video content, they can inadvertently they can like not be very careful about what's in the background,
Right.
or they cannot think about the symbolism they're projecting with what they're talking about
Yes.
versus their
Yeah.
environment. So I'd love your thoughts on some of the common pitfalls that content marketers run into when they start creating video content and how to avoid them.
Well, I think, I think we are all guilty of this, or can be. I certainly have been. Do your research. Know what you're saying through your lens, how it's going to be taken by someone else who's maybe looking through a different lens. That doesn't get so much into professional stuff, but on personal, especially right now, everybody's pretty emotional about what's going on in the world. Everyone's got an opinion. I certainly do. Um, but I've learned that lesson, that I'm seeing something through one lens and someone else is hearing it through a different lens, and now all hell's breaking loose. So I think that that's really important, to stop, take a breath, think about what you're saying and how it's going to be perceived, even if you don't agree with that perception.
Yep. So important. And just like you would for any kind of static images, just, do an inventory, understand
Right.
what's going on. And also do things like look for your laundry, because it's funny how frequently I've had folks be like, yeah, there was the laundry basket, so it's embarrassing. Um,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and then that's the kind of thing that can take a video from being something you want to reuse forever to being something
Right.
that you're like, darn it, that was a great conversation we had, and I never
Right.
want that video to be shown to anybody ever again because of,
Right.
whatever this mishap is. So I know I always
Exactly.
do a quick scan. Also, of course, to make sure that there aren't any pets that are going to start being naughty in the middle
Right.
of things, because just some days they are not up for being a
Yep.
part of the content chat fam. Some days they need to
I
be
feel that.
part of the living room sofa team.
Yes,
So,
yes. And that's okay. You can hang on to that for your blooper reel, and that works.
so we love a good tool or a template. So I'd love to hear what tools you recommend for creating, editing, and sharing video content to take things from, even though they're DIY, to take them from being,
Yeah.
fine to having a little pizzazz, because you always have lots of pizzazz. So how do you do it?
Well, I do think that tool CapCut is a great tool. There's a lot to it. It's a huge app. Even the free version has lots and lots of options. So get in there and play around with it. You're not going to go public. You're not going to, accidentally publish it. So play around with it. Try that, um, the teleprompter tool. See what you think, and then I've been doing these Monday Marketing Minute videos, and then at the end I have a little graphic that moves, that comes up, and it took me not that long to figure it out, but I took some time to make sure that it looked the way I want it to. We'll have to redo it when we rebrand, because we'll have a new logo, but just kind of to have an ending to it. So it's sort of a period on the piece. And then just to watch your time. So if you are making it specifically for a reel, it's got to be under 90 seconds. And if you are going to add a little graphic at the end or the beginning, it's got to be less than that. So to watch that time is really important. And then again, the hardware, it can really just be things you order off Amazon, as far as the lights, the mics, whatever you think that you might need. And if you're just shooting it of yourself, you really don't need anything but a phone. You can do this. I wouldn't go outside and shoot if it's a windy day. It's going to pick that up. So find a place in your house that works really well with sunlight. And again, check your background, make sure your dog's not there. And you can record it, as many times as you want before you publish it. But then also make sure that you are taking advantage of those tools. So again, back to Instagram, You want to add captions. Sometimes you want to add some stickers or a graphic. You want to use Instagram's tools. It will reward you for using their tools, and it will definitely help optimize it and get further reach, especially to people who don't already follow you.
Really good points. Something I wanted to go back to that you mentioned at the top of the hour is, you're in the midst of doing a rebrand. So I would love to hear your perspective on, when should folks consider doing a rebrand? Because, again, so much has changed over the last
Yeah.
couple of years that if we're going out there with that same brand, even something that felt really authentic from a thought leadership standpoint a couple of years ago, doesn't anymore. So how do we know if it's time for doing that kind of a refresh?
Well, I'll be honest, Erica, mine was never a great brand. And I kind of happened into this whole career, and the whole brand just sort of happened. So, long story short, I used to be in the hospitality industry. I planned conventions and trade shows. I had a really great time. And my husband and I moved to Louisville, Kentucky in 2002, where I'm from originally. He's not. And at the time, he was practicing as a full-time emergency room physician, and he doesn't do that anymore. He does something else, but he did that at the time. And so I could no longer say, I got to fly to Vegas tomorrow for a week-long convention, because we were starting a family. So I went through kind of several iterations of being my own boss. I had a few businesses, a couple with a friend. It just kind of like kept trying this because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was raised by an entrepreneur. I knew I had it in my blood, but I had to find the one that would stick. So jump ahead a little bit. A friend of mine, we had an online gift store. And long story short, she had to go back to her full-time job. And so that kind of shut down. My friend Danielle, who became my friend through the business, called me and said, I love the way you wrote about our product. You should be a sales rep. Well, I didn't know what that meant. So I called someone who was a sales rep, and he kind of talked me through sales repping 101, and his company had the word brands in it. And I really liked that because it represented that he represents a multitude of different brands. So I wanted something with the word brands. Well, we had moved from New York City, and our favorite part of the city is Soho. So we tried to make the company something with Soho and brands. We also had a dog named Soho at the time. To buy a URL with the word Soho in it is awfully expensive. We could not get it. So we decided, okay, we still want to name after something in New York. We named it after our old apartment, which was 520 East 72nd Street. So we named it 520 East Brands. And I was a sales rep with this little company. Well, about a week into getting the logo and the website and everything set, I realized, oopsie, the area code in Louisville, Kentucky, where we live, is 502. So from day one, I have been called 502 East Brands, which is not the name of my company. So it has been driving me crazy for 15 years. And over time, the sales repping business, a customer of mine, became a friend of mine on Facebook. This was 2008, 2009. And he said, I see you on there all the time. Will you help me with my store? And I said, sure. And so from there, the social media portion of the business started taking off. We shut down sales repping, but I didn't redo the name. I just kept it. And so 15 years in, it has been bothering me since then. And I decided it's time. This brand does not represent who we are and what we do. I don't like it. And so for me, now is the right time. Part of that also is I had one Instagram account. The Instagram account is my initials and my last name. And that account has been sort of a hodgepodge of all of me, business, personal, politics. It's sort of everything that I like to talk about and share about. And it just became too much. And I decided that account needs to become the business account where I share relevant information about small business and social media marketing. And then I'm going to start a private account for sharing all my kids' pictures and all that kind of fun stuff. And then anything political I can put over there behind the wall. So that is kind of what I've done. And I'm in the process right now. It is a slow process of moving all of my personal content from the old one to the new one and leaving everything that's on brand. And in a few weeks, when we have the new brand ready to go, I will change the name of that Instagram account. Now I've got 2 different Instagrams, a new brand that I love, and a website. And I'm very, very excited. The team has been working on the new brand name. I met with the graphic designer last week. we're very excited about all that's coming. And I'm excited to sort of have this refresh and this rebirth. And then we have to determine the strategy behind how we're going to roll it out and communicate with our current clients and potential clients. We still do the same thing. We've just changed our name. So that's
I
my
love
story.
it. I love
Thank you.
it that, you're finally gonna be able to be, out there with a brand that reflects who you are, what you do, and who you want to attract, and I love
Yes.
that, and no more people transposing parts of your name because that would be really, really annoying, and then I
It's
would
been
personally
an
then I would be like, "Oh, do I need to buy that other domain name
right.
too and redirect it? Should I do I need to just be
Uh,
assuming people will get it
yeah.
wrong?" Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. So frustration is about to end. And so I can't tell you best practices about when, to rebrand. I knew for me the time was now, and this just made sense. And I'm so excited about it. The team is so excited about it, and it's going to be a whole new look and a whole refreshing brand. So we can't wait.
Awesome. So for the Instagram account, you're keeping the existing account as the brand account, but you'll rename it. Now, what about
Mhm.
with your other accounts? Are you going to do the same thing there, or are you going to start fresh with the new brand?
So the company account for Facebook exists. I have a Facebook page for 520 East Brand, so we'll rename that. So that will still exist. On LinkedIn, it's just me. So I'll update my bio, but it's still just going to be me. There's not really a reason to have a company page for my small business on LinkedIn. I just don't think I'm going to get the traction on it. Who really cares what I'm posting there? I would rather post it as me, and then my teammates can share that as well. For me, that just makes sense. For my clients, sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. So I just don't think that there's a cookie cutter way to do any of this. You have to do what makes sense for your brand at the time.
Totally makes sense to me. So we've got some time for some Q&A. So if we have any folks
Okay.
who have some live questions, you can go ahead and if you type them in to Twitter, Alec will relay them to us. Or if you're watching live right now on LinkedIn, you can just type on the event page where this is streaming, and your questions will show up for us in our feed. Otherwise, you can, if you're watching this on a recap, you can go ahead and leave your questions there, and we'll make sure that Shane sees them for you too. So let's see here. While we wait to see if we have any live questions, do do you think, um, do you think there's any of the kind of like emerging social channels that people need to be concerned about right now? Because, for example, Threads has been kind of up and coming,
Hmm.
so is Mastodon, Blue Sky. There are all these folks trying to kind of vie for being the
Yeah.
next, Twitter replacement. Is that, are they places where people should be experimenting? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's important that you grab up your name on those platforms so you have the option and somebody else doesn't take them. It's really easy to do on Threads specifically. So I definitely recommend doing that. I think the jury is still out on all of these. I think everyone is trying to be the replacement for what Twitter was in its heyday. And it's so sad that it's gone. It makes me so sad. I just don't think any of them are cutting it. I think, Threads, I've seen some good and some bad. I think the best thing I found about Twitter were the lists, and that you
Yeah.
could be on your main feed and then you could have the list. I know Mastodon has a little bit of that, but it's really clunky and not easy to maneuver. I actually have not experimented on Blue Sky, so I can't speak to that. So I think it's important to try them out, see if you find your audience there. Right now, we're not really venturing into any of them for our clients. That doesn't mean that it won't come in 2024. We're just kind of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. And I think it's hard too with some of the platforms where they require you to post live. Because I
Yeah,
know frequently you don't want to be logging in with credentials from your client. You really want to be
right.
using a tool where you can schedule things to optimize when things are going out. Otherwise, it can get pretty hairy, and you're a lot more likely to be making a mistake if you are logged
Right.
into somebody's account and sharing something live versus
Hmm.
having that opportunity to schedule it. At least that's my my take on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be able to just manage it from a month and make sure you're not over posting one day and then nothing the next day. I mean, it helps with balance. And that's really an important piece of being active on social.
Totally agreed. Well, Alec has teed up a few questions here. So the first one I have for you is, how do you set expectations with clients about what video content can or cannot achieve?
So we're very honest. When we start with a client who's never done video, it's going to take a minute. This is not a magic bullet. Just because you put a video out there does not mean you're going to have 100 new customers tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way. So this is a long tail piece of marketing, and it has to work in conjunction with your other pieces of marketing, your SEO, your website, your PR, your paid ads. It all has to work together. If one piece is not functioning, the whole thing is going to kind of fall apart. So you need all pieces. Also, we need some trial and error. You need a few months, 3 to 6 months of watching those videos to determine this is what people in your audience like. This is what they'll respond to. These are days and times that make sense. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall, but there is a little bit of that in the beginning to see what works. If you're taking over a client, or if we're taking over a client who had worked with another agency or they were doing their own social, we are checking that data to see here's where they were doing really well, days and times. Let's start there. Let's bump it up
Yeah.
from there and see if we can get more traction on that. We've got a client we've been working with for just about 4 or 5 months, and they keep wanting us to use polls as a research tool. We want to know, do our clients want to see this or that? And so we've been pushing these polls, and the only people answering them were the people on my team until last week. Last week, we got responses from the audience. So it took some time to gain some traction, but now we're able to say to the client, this is the type of stuff your audience wants, and here's what they're actually responding to. And so that trial and error piece is important. I know it can be frustrating because people don't want to be patient, but you just have to be.
It's true. I mean, people will get discouraged when they put out, their first
Yeah.
video and they're so excited about it and no one cared. But it's because,
Right.
the algorithm hasn't learned yet that you have engaging
Yes,
video content. It takes, the
absolutely.
time of you posting it, people engaging with it, to teach the algorithm what kind of people are interested in your
Hmm.
content. What kind of content are you publishing? Because
Right.
it's, gone are the days that you had like a Yahoo editor validating that, yes, you had good content and assigning it categories. Now it's,
Right.
it's a bot is doing that. The AI is deciding who you are, what you do, and who
Hmm.
should care based
Yep.
upon each little indicator.
Right.
And that just, it takes time. And I
Yeah.
say that as the
Yeah.
least patient person. It's terrible, but it takes time. You have to just wait
I
it
get
out.
it. And sometimes it's a fluke. Sometimes we're like, why did that video do so well? Or that graphic, or that, why did it do so well? We don't know. Sometimes you just don't know. It's just dumb luck. And it just really worked. Somebody who had a big following liked it and shared it. And for whatever
Yeah.
reason, it clicked. So, typically we can do some research and figure out this is what they liked about it and why they liked it. But sometimes you can't, and you just got to
Yeah.
go with it.
So our second question was kind of related to that first one, and it was, what metrics or KPIs do you typically recommend tracking when first starting your video content journey? So, how do you define what success looks like, and then what are the KPIs or metrics that you should be looking at to see if you're meeting those objectives?
So the first thing you want to do is just look at your views. How many views did you start with last week, and how many do you have this week? And is it bigger? So simple math. And you can write that down manually. You don't need insights to even tell you that. So if you're tracking it, great. You can also log into the insights and you can see that. But the numbers that we really like to look at, we like to know engagement. So is somebody taking some kind of action on that video? They're not just watching it, but they are liking it or commenting it or sharing it or saving it. Saves have been the new thing we're watching. So that's really important. But then you also want to make sure that if there's a call to action in it, that call to action is happening. And that's going to take some work with your SEO person. Instagram is not always a cause and effect with that kind of website traffic. So it's important that we're looking at dates when things are posted and pieces of content. And then did it land? And can we attribute it to that piece of content? The other thing that we really take seriously is reach. Specifically on Instagram, we're looking at not just how many people did we reach, but how many non-followers did we reach. If we're only reaching the same people over and over and over, well, that might be great. They might be your core customer and they might really like it, but we want to get outside of that and get in front of new eyeballs. Sometimes that takes a paid campaign to make that happen. And sometimes it might take some collaboration with a bigger account that will help you kind of get over that hump. And so all of those things are what we're looking for in our KPIs.
Totally makes sense. And again, it just goes back to what are you trying to do with your video content? For example, if
Right.
you have a really small, like if you're on the B2B side, you might have a really small target audience that you're
Yeah.
trying to reach. And if all of them do subscribe, well, then great. If you have great
Hmm.
engagement with your existing people, that's fantastic. But for most
Right.
brands, they have a much larger pool of potential customers than they have followers. So it is
Right.
important to make sure that you're looking at the right metrics to show if you're actually meeting those business objectives. But of course, that also means you have to have decided beforehand when you create a piece of content, what is this piece of content's job? What am I trying to do here? Am I trying to
Right.
reach new people? Am I trying to get people to come and visit a physical location? Like, what do I need them to do?
Hmm.
Versus a lot of times people just track whatever the easiest to track metric is
Right.
without thinking about, but what did you do in the video? Did you have a call to action? Were
Right.
did you give them a clear next step? No, then
Right.
why are you mad that they didn't take any? Because you didn't give them one.
Exactly. Exactly. It always goes back to objectives and your strategy. I will say 99% of the time, it always goes back to objectives and strategies. That 1%, that's the fun part. That's when you throw out your, behind the scenes and your bloopers. Once or twice a year, share that stuff on your company page because it's fun and it gets people back engaged with you. Maybe they forgot what you do or who you are. So something funny might attract them. And then now they're back in. Now you're coming up again in the algorithm with your consistent, important, objective content.
Totally. And something you said also reminded me you can sometimes have really great content that just doesn't land because there's something happening in the world that everyone's
Yes,
excited about. Like if there's some viral video that everyone is talking about or replicating or remixing, then your really great piece of content that's not related could be drowned out. So it is so
absolutely.
important, even if you're posting things or scheduling things through a platform, you still need to check in and see what's
Hmm.
going on. So that way you're not like, oh, this kind of content doesn't work when it's just that, you posted something at the same time that everybody was engrossed with, Swifty mania. There's just, you're not
Which
going to
I
compete
relate
with
to
that. It's
firsthand.
not gonna
Yeah,
happen, no
right.
matter
And
how great it is.
absolutely. And we're big fans of schedulers. It helps us to manage our accounts. But if there's an emergency in the world, we don't want to be selling the widgets that we sell for our clients. Get out
Yeah,
of the way so that people can get the news that they want, especially when it's a crisis. You're not going to sell it. It's not going to do well. Take it down, or not
yeah,
take it down, but unschedule it so that it doesn't go. And then you can save that piece of content in a few days when the news cycle has settled down.
totally, and, it's important to resist the urge to try to capitalize on or play off of those
Mm,
trending hashtags, because 9 times
yeah.
out of 10, you are gonna just make people super annoyed with you. It is not gonna
Yeah.
be a good look, because then you get
Right.
to be in one of those, roundups on a popular marketing blog of brands that were totes inappropriate during
Yep.
whatever the, crisis was, and you don't wanna
Yeah.
land there. That is not good traffic.
No, absolutely not. Stay on brand, stay in your lane. And really, if you don't post that day at all, no one's going to notice if there's a crisis going on in the world. So, you know, get out of the way. Let people get the news that they want and they'll hear about what you're selling in a few days or they'll see your bloopers in a few days. Just let it be. You'll thank yourself for it later. Your client will thank you for it too, for watching out for their reputation.
Totally, could not agree more. So Shane, where can folks find you if they're looking for now? Because I know things are changing, but Where can they find
Yes.
you, or do you have any upcoming, webinars or presentations? Like, if they want more of your insights, what are the best platforms to connect with you on?
Sure. So you can find me on my website, which will redirect to the new one when that happens. So don't worry. It's still 520eastbrands.com. That's the name of the website. And then you can find me currently on Instagram. My public account is, again, Smo Shaps, SMOSHAPS. It's my initials and my last name, but that is going to change to the new brand as soon as we're ready to announce it. So I just kind of kept it. I didn't want to change it twice. So we're just kind of leaving it as it is. There's still pictures of my children there. I'm archiving them and moving them over. I'm on 2022. I'm so close. I'm almost done. But the dog pictures will stay. They are part of my brand. So dogs stay
Fair
on the
enough.
company page. They're not going anywhere. My kids are happy to be off the page. They've had enough.
They don't want to be part of the family business? Not
No, in
yet?
fact, my daughter is actually majoring in, it's called media advertising. So she is in the social media world, but she would like to work for a great big company. She would really like to work for Tarte Cosmetics, if anyone out there has a connection. She's a sophomore in college right now. But she wants to work in-house for a company and manage all of their social content. That's her grand plan, move to a big city and have a good time. So I
I think
like
that's a
focusing on
great
those
plan.
small businesses. Yeah, I like focusing on small businesses because I like working on teams of different people and having different voices and brands in my head. That keeps it fun. But I also like having contact with the owner of the company. We work with family-owned businesses a lot, and then even the larger businesses we work with, those have a family piece involved, and we really enjoy that. But that's not where she's headed. And my son would really like to have nothing to do with any of this. Thank you very much. He's also kind of sick of me asking on Sunday nights, is Taylor playing? He's had enough.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being our guest and giving folks kind of a peek into what's, happening with social media right now. And I hope
Mhm.
you've given them also the courage to get out there and just start creating some video content, because the sooner you start, the quicker
Yeah,
it is you're going to get good at it. So
absolutely. Yeah, go do it. You can do it.
thanks so much. And everyone, have a great rest of your week. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Erica. Great to see you.
Take care.